Good afternoon and welcome to the CDBG Advisory Committee, a meeting of October 30th. Could we have roll call, please?
Committee members Arbinian,
Present.
Markarian,
Present.
Ramirez,
Here.
Tashjian is absent, Chair Olivares.
Here.
The agenda for the October 30th, 2013 meeting of the CDBG Advisory Committee was posted on or before Friday, October 25th, 2013 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. Item 2, minutes. A, approval of the minutes of the August 29, 2013 and October 9th, 2013 CDBG Advisory Committee meetings.
Okay, thank you. Before we do that, I apologize to the audience for our delay in getting started. We were just checking on a privacy issue with GTV6, and that's been taken care of. So thank you for your patience. Could I have a motion on the minutes? Can we do both at the same time? Or?
I believe Committee member Ramirez was not here. She wasn't present at the August 29th meeting, so you would need two different motions.
And I have a correction on last month's meeting.
Okay, so we'll do, which ones are we doing right now, August 29th,
Sure.
2013?
Okay, can read the motion. I'd like to move the minutes for August 29th for approval of the committee.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Committee members Armenian,
Yes.
Markarian,
Yes.
Ramirez will abstain. Tashjian is absent. Chair Olivares.
Yes.
We were just voting on the 29th, right?
Yes.
Correct.
So I can't abstain. I wasn't on the.
Right.
I wasn't a member. I had no vote.
Okay, so it's not up. You did not exist at the time.
I didn't exist.
Okay.
Okay, so the next one is meeting on October 9th.
And I have a correction on that. I think maybe you picked up on it, Vice Chair. On page 5, is the financial statements. That question was, I think, by Vice Chair. Wasn't me.
For the financial statement
Yeah.
for each applicant.
Yeah.
So what is the correction?
It says Member Ramirez asked.
Oh. Okay, if you don't
So
have a
you said
member.
page
So
five.
I move approval as corrected.
Okay.
Okay, so it would change to Vice Chair Markarian asking that question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, can we have a motion?
Okay, so with that correction, I'd like to move the minutes for October 9th for approval.
I just moved it.
That's corrected. Okay, a second?
Second that.
Yeah.
Okay, roll call.
Committee members Armenian,
Yes.
Markarian,
Yes.
Ramirez.
Yes?
Tashjian is absent. Chair Olivares.
Yes.
Item 3 is oral communications. I do not have any cards.
Okay.
Moving on to item 4, business agenda. A, reports for information only. At 1, receive presentations from fiscal year 2013-14 CDBG funded social service programs. The first agency is City of Glendale Community Services and Parks Youth and Family Services Program.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Olivares, committee members. My name is Walter Alvarez. I'm the Community Services Supervisor for the Youth and Family Services Program. The Youth and Family Services Program has been in existence in this community for approximately 11 years now, and it's targeted to serve youth between the ages of 14 to 17. Our primary focus is to assist the families in dealing with youth issues in the community. What we do is we provide direct information and referrals to various partners in the communities, and we also conduct case management on a needed basis. The way our program works is we partner with various and collaborate with various agencies in the community. Some of our main supporters or collaborative members are the LA County Probation Department, LA County Department of Probation, DCFS, as well as the Social Services Department, and also Glendale Unified School District. These are our primary feeders to our programs. We partner with these agencies to try to target the issues of youth and families in the community. Once we've gone out there, we've presented, we've thrown our pitch out, informed the community, these partners of what we do, our goal is to then receive and take these families and address some of the family issues that may be impacting directly the youth between those ages of 14 to 17. Again, one of our main ones tends to be LA County Probation. Glendale has the luxury of having Glendale-based youth probation officers at the high school level. So a lot of probation officers, when these kids get involved or wrapped up with the juvenile justice systems, they're mandated to comply with certain orders, be it counseling, community service, compliance for their crime, parenting education for parents, or various other social services that they may be required or mandated by court to complete within a 6-month to a year period. Once the kids come in, our staff takes time to evaluate. They conduct an intake, assess the family dynamics, family members, and those who are within the family circles that could help the family to address immediate needs as well as long-term needs. Once we've identified that, then we go out and look at the partners in the community who could help us link these kids to services out there, because that is our primary goal at the end of the day. There's nothing more frustrating than being mandated to comply with something and where to go. Who do we call? There's many obstacles, there's many barriers. So at that point, what our staff does is we conduct the legwork. We do the legwork and reach out to the community and reach out to the partners and really have a name, a date, an appointment for the families and for the youth to go and get those services needed. Again, the direct linkage is one of the primary focuses we kind of sell on with the families and the partners and the families who we serve. Because again, they don't know where to go, they don't know who to turn to. They come to us, again, because of the various years we have in the community. A lot of the partners know who we are, and we directly link them for services. This past year, Youth and Family Services went through restructuring based on our department. Our program was temporarily transferred to the Glendale Youth Alliance for a period of time because of restructuring within our department, and we apparently did not get funding, but now we got approved funding back again to our program. So we are excited to kind of push forward and really start making an impact again in our community.
Where was the funding from?
From CDBG.
Oh, for last year you're referring?
Yes, from last year's funding. Unfortunately, the funding wasn't approved, but it got put back into our program, and we're ready to move forward. We are conducting youth and families, but it's more information and referrals at this time. We don't have the time to do the case management, so that's where the money, the additional funding comes. Because of the funding source, there's an additional time to really do direct case management with the youth and families. And I think in a nutshell, that's what we do in the community.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions?
So who is actually providing the services? Who's doing the actual work in helping
Right now,
the
our
family?
staff level is made up of myself, a supervisor, and an hourly program services coordinator.
Yeah, no, what I meant is you are doing referrals, right?
Correct.
Referrals to who? Like who's doing the actual providing, once you do the referral, who are you providing referrals to?
It all depends on the need. I'll give you an example. A minor may be mandated to do individual counseling to address drug issues. And so then we reach out to our partners. It could be, for example, Didi Hirsch could be one of our partners that we work with. And we look at and assess what the requirements are for that agency, for this individual to be part of that agency. And so we'll work with the families to make sure they got everything in order to be able to qualify for the services of Didi Hirsch. So the direct service provider becomes then, in that case, Didi Hirsch therapists or counselors.
So you have a pool of service providers?
Correct.
That you actually refer to?
Correct.
Refer families or individuals to?
That's correct, yes, sir.
And do you list those partners in your application?
The what?
Do you list your partners or that pool in your application?
In our application, no, it's not listed on there. We do put out a social services directory within the City of Glendale website, and that's something our program has organized and put together, informing the community of these services as well, that they're up on the city website.
Okay.
Them knowing the service is great, but it's the legwork that goes behind getting linked to the service that becomes a challenge. Again, whether language barriers, whether time constraints, whether the paperwork. We may get that paperwork from the agency required and work with the parents to be able to have that I's dot, T's dotted to make sure there's no obstacles or delays in service.
Do you do any performance assessment of your partners so that you know that they're meeting the needs in a efficient and productive way?
We don't. We haven't had a need to. Personally, I felt that they do follow through with our needs for most of our customers, and that's where we evaluate success. You know, if we get 30 families or youth in our program and we're able to deliver services or link them at 80% rate, we define that as good success measurements.
So that's a success measurement of your referral.
Of our referrals, correct.
So you don't go beyond that in terms of assessing whether or not those families' needs were met or the individual's needs were met once you've referred them?
We do in the sense of compliance because they have to have a report back to the court. So the
That's what I'm
probation
asking for,
officer
okay.
will request that. So that's where we do measure the compliance
Okay.
component.
Thank you.
Just one quick question. You said you have, because of the limited funding, you lost your case manager. How did that impact your volume or your service? Did you
Again-
serve the same numbers? I mean,
No, we'll reduce. We did reduce last year based on the funding. In the
Right.
past, our program has gone up to 35,000, and it dwindled year by year, based obviously on the funding approved by the state. We've gone down to 10, and we just reduced the level of service we could provide, meaning that if we started with serving 10, you know, if it's half, then we go down to 6 or 5. But we still increase our success rate because we're always more focused to provide individual attention to those 5. So our success rate is what we up in that sense.
Is there any sort of sorry, this will be my last question. Is there any, do you have any sort of sense you can give us of trends of the types of issues that you're referring for?
Sure. It all depends on the crime rate and crime statistics within the department or probation department. It tends to be mostly graffiti. It's at the top, graffiti vandalism, theft. Theft is number one, graffiti vandalism, and drug-related charges thereafter. And we do have a list of 25 offenses that we normally target.
Thank you.
Okay. Remind me, I know obviously we funded you to a degree from CDBG over the years. Do you have any other leverage? I don't recall.
Any other what?
Any other funding? Do you leverage the funding or strictly CDBG?
Strictly CDBG and city funding, of course, general fund.
Right. And you were located at one point at the residence or the house that was next to the park. Where are you now?
still there, right?
Correct.
Are you
The
still there?
house is still there. Unfortunately, our office and services are no longer there. We've been relocated to Pacific Community Center.
Okay.
Yeah, which is a great resource for us because there's so many meeting rooms now. We're able to partner to provide workshops and additional services for the youth.
Okay. Well, I don't have any more questions. Anybody have any more questions? No. Thank you. Appreciate
thank you for your
coming
time.
over.
Have a good day.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention we're doing this because we have new members on the committee, and so we're trying to get them all familiar with your programs before the February interviews. And so this is a good chance for them to ask questions and get more familiar with what you guys do in the community. So, who's next?
Next, we have Glendale Police Department Students Training as Role Models, STAR.
Laura. Okay. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Officer Rebecca Jackson.
Good afternoon, Aaron Castillo.
Okay. Welcome.
We have a little PowerPoint to help introduce ourselves. But basically, we work with the STAR program. It's students training as role models. It's the police department that works with Parks Department, and we both facilitate the program. What we basically do is we work with the youth. We choose children from 9 to 13 years of age who are considered at risk, and we work with them once a week and take them out once a month to help them build a relationship with police. So we'll go over this here.
Here you go.
Yeah. Oh.
How many years have you been doing this?
I've been doing this for 3 years. It's going to be about 3
But the
years.
program is how long?
The program? Oh, it's been since
A long time, I know.
Long time, yeah.
mid-90s? Okay, maybe 15. I haven't been around for that long, but. So basically what we do is we try to teach these children how to be good mentors. We try to prepare them so that eventually they'll be the kids leading other kids and showing kids what the right thing is to do. And we feel that them having a relationship with police officers, they understand that we're humans too, and that it kind of gives them, we act as role models for them, try to train them to become role models for other students at other schools. What we do is we meet every Tuesday from 3 to 6:30. During this time, we do activities. We try to get them into physical activity, so we try to dedicate some time to that. We also help them with their homework. Every day we help them with their homework. We go over it. We stay on top of their grades. I'm definitely really strict with that. I'm always checking on their grades, making sure that their behavior is well in school. I try to keep in contact with their teachers to verify that, to see if there's any problems at school. I always get on them for their grades, and I try to emphasize that grades are so important, and I always try to tell them about college and encourage them to set that as a goal. So we go over homework every Tuesday, and then we give them lunch. We prepare lunch for them. We either get donations for lunch or we make it ourselves. We figure out a way to do that. And then every Tuesday we also do a lesson plan. So we go over different types of important characteristics, whether it's fairness, equality, loyalty, trustworthiness. We go over having good character. We try to teach them what we want them, how we want them to behave in the community. We also teach them citizenship. I mean, you name it, we try to cover everything, whether it's safety or the list goes on. Also, once a month, we take them on a monthly excursion, an outing. Sometimes we try to make it fun, take them somewhere where they haven't been before. If we can, if their budget allows it, we'll try to take them to an amusement park, whether it be Magic Mountain, Disneyland. But a lot of times we also try to take them to an educational location. So like the Ronald Reagan Library, or something that's a little educational museum. And we definitely always encourage them to do volunteer service. As a matter of fact, last month we took them to a beach cleanup. And all of us, 20 students, including us, were cleaning up the beach in Santa Monica. So, we try to, also show that this is important. And then after they did the whole, activity and cleaning up the beach, we took them to the movies to kind of give them a little reward. So that's normally what we do once a month. And like I said,
is this year round?
Yes, year round, all
52
12
weeks.
months. Yes. And like I explained earlier, our mission is to help these kids develop a relationship with us, with police, and so that they can, they see a different side to police. A lot of them are scared. They think, that we're scary, but they actually get to have a relationship, and they feel a lot more comfortable. They open up, and they realize that, we're really there to help them out, not to arrest them, or, it's not negative. We're actually there to encourage them and to help them. The program, like I said, focuses on at-risk children, so there is a criteria that we do have to meet. That's normally, we want to get kids who need our help. That's what we're aiming for. These are some of the different activities that we do, which include skits, team building, sports, health, fitness, bullying, peer pressure, trivia. Like I said, we try to go over everything. And we also try to, reward them on holidays. For Christmas, we try to get them gifts if our budget allows us to. And like I mentioned, community service is very important. We definitely try to emphasize the importance of community service to the kids. And at least twice or 3 times a year, we go out. When Glendale has that Glendale City cleanup, we have them there. They're cleaning up too, picking up cigarette butts, or cleaning the parks, whatever you name it, they do it. These are different areas. This is, different things. I mean, we take them. It's great. It's actually a great experience because they do things that they've never been able to do or would never be able to do without the program. Horseback riding. The kids love that. Most of them haven't done it until they've been to this program or participated. We take them out to ride bikes. We also take them to do tours in the police department. Get them out and get them seeing different things that they haven't seen before. And then once they reach a certain age, hopefully, they've completed every stage and maintained a positive level with their grades, good academic level, and also a good behavior at school. Then they get to that. Normally, it's about 14, 15. We graduate them as they enter high school, and we do it here, and we try to make it a big deal so that they realize that it's a big accomplishment for them. And then where does our funding come from? CDBG, obviously, and most the other part is basically we depend on donations. So it's you never know how every year is going to be, but so far we've been lucky. Some years have been really difficult, but for the most part we've been able to manage. Any questions?
I'm sure we have questions.
How many? I have a question.
Go ahead.
Have you increased membership? I know at one point there was a decrease in your membership.
Right. We would love to, but we don't have the budget to increase. We don't.
So if you had the budget, there is enough.
If we had the budget, we would
applicants.
definitely, but it's expensive. The more kids you need, the more officers you need also.
Sure.
So then that would require another officer. But if we could, we definitely would.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering, you said you emphasized grades. How about attendance?
Oh, attendance. We look, when I talk to a teacher, I ask them, how's everything? Normally attendance is never a problem with.
It's not?
Not with the kids that we're working with. Normally they're pretty good. But,
It's good to
yeah,
know.
I'm actually a school resource officer at Hoover, so attendance is a problem with other kids. But these kids, normally attendance is not the problem. It's just the grades and sometimes behavior.
Some questions. First, thank you for the presentation, very informative. How many kids are in the program at any given time?
Normally, it's been ranging from about 18 to 22 within this last year. Well, with the time that I've been there, I think the max has been 24. We would love to keep it up to 25. We think we can handle that, but like I said, with the budget, it's a little hard. Every student, it gets more expensive, and that makes it more difficult for us. So right now we're at, I believe, 18 right now. We've just graduated too this last month, so we're at 18.
And so is the issue more of availability of time from police officers, or is it the other types of expenses?
Well, the expenses, because everything, we pay for, it's per student. So that's one thing. And also, if we were to get to 25, it's really difficult if it's just one officer right now. Say me. Sometimes it's one officer, sometimes it's two, but to manage everybody's homework, it's really hard. So, that's partly part of the problem too.
And then,
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm Sergeant John Gilkerson. I oversee the community policing office, and part of that is the STAR program. And so while I'm blessed to have Rebecca and a few other officers that take care of that, it comes under my supervision. And I just wanted to clarify or make sure that you understood that this was a program that officers have in addition to their regular duties. For instance, Rebecca's an SRO. Blanca Aguilar is one of my community lead officers. So they do STAR as an addition to their regular duties. A lot of that is flex time, so they need to flex their days and do that. So when Officer Jackson refers to things like budget and things like that, it's actually budget on our side, manpower, things like that. I don't know. The majority of the CDBG money goes to pay for that parks aspect that keeps the admin together on STAR, because that's huge, trying to keep accountability for CDBG and other people that we answer to, finding the dinner donations weekly, things like that, donations for trips and those sort of activities. So that money mostly goes to that purpose, and it's a great help. So I just wanted to make sure that.
So the time you're providing, of the officer's time, is coming from the police department?
Correct, sir.
That value?
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because over the years, it's the only way it's been able to function.
Well, I'll tell you, as with the rest of the world, we've taken hits in resources and manpower, and so I wish I had, because we have PAL boxing now in collaboration with the YMCA. We have this now in collaboration with the Parks Department, Community Development and Parks. We had the other PAL program, which was Blue Shadows, the equestrian team. We had to let that go. because it's just not something I can dedicate an officer or two officers to operate. So.
I had a couple more related questions. So how do you select participants for those students? Like, how do you select the students who come into the program?
Normally, either we try to get referrals from teachers at the local schools, or I don't normally do that just myself, or sometimes parents will, hear about the program, they'll come to us, and we'll figure it out that way. But a lot of times it's referrals from the teachers or from some of the staff members. Since we're at Pacific Park, it's really easy to keep in contact with the teachers at Edison. A lot of our students are from that school because it's local, it's easy. It makes it a lot easier for us to be in that area. So normally it's referrals.
And the teachers in any of the schools that have students in this age demographic are aware of your program?
Yes, they know about our program. Also, I always ask officers, if you ever go to a call or you find a student who kind of meets our criteria, let me know. That's a great way to recruit kids too.
Okay. Third question, and I only have 4. Third question is, in your program, do you do anything that builds intercultural understanding between different cultures?
We try. We have before, like we'll try to have every student come and talk about, their own culture or represent that. Sometimes we'll try to have other people come talk to the students. We don't, make it, it's not like a priority, but we try to implement as much, a little of everything. So we have before, we definitely have. But yeah, we don't, like do it every month, or it's not something that we do all the time, but
Right.
we have.
And my final question is, have any of the students that have come through the program become Glendale police officers?
I wish. Not while I've been here. I don't think so.
Okay.
No, that would be great. But we have had some become explorers, and a lot of times explorers become police officers. So we have one right now who is an explorer that just came from STAR. So maybe she might be the first.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Actually, one of the questions that I had was, what's the ethnic breakup of your groups generally?
Percentage-wise, I wouldn't know.
About 95% Hispanic, and we have one Pacific Islander and Asian, and Irish. But mostly percentage-wise Hispanic.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just curious, does the STAR program just serve the census tract with the low income, or does it serve all the schools?
Low income, it has to, yes. We look for a certain income level, and it's the low income.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want to make a personal comment. I became very familiar with STAR years ago when and I don't remember the gentleman's name who was working with you guys, but we took a number of kids to the Peterson Museum.
Oh, wow.
And had them go through the museum, which was exciting to them. But also then it was followed by an educational meeting where we talked about careers and all,
Right.
and it was great. The kids were great. I mean,
Yeah.
they were just
learn
like
a
any other
lot.
kid.
They learn a lot. It's a great program, definitely. We all love it personally. It's not just work, we love it.
Also, my husband and I have worked back in about the same time. I think we took him out to Vasquez Rocks and kind of an outdoor barbecue.
Well,
So I can see why they go there.
If you guys have something to teach them, you guys are welcome. We love to get new people.
Just to get them out.
Them to
Yeah.
see new faces also.
Do some geology.
Yeah, anything, We like to open their minds, so.
Well, thank you for taking the time to come and
Thank you.
show
Thank
us
you
your
for having
program.
us.
Thank you. Great. Who's next?
Next, we have Catholic Charities of Los Angeles, Inc., Loaves and Fishes Homeless Prevention.
Good afternoon. Welcome.
Committee members, Chairman Vargas. Most of you, 3 of you, are quite familiar with the Catholic Charities Loaves and Fish program. It's a major kind of poverty program for the city of Glendale. Just to kind of sidetrack, I was one of the, original starters of the STAR program when we had Catholic Charities with the captain, now Captain Nicolaisen. Is he still with the force? No, he's retired, and he was sergeant at that time, and we had a police committee. So it's a wonderful program, and very proud of it that it's still going. But also, I as you can see, look at my hair and all that, I've been here a long time, that we started Loaves and Fishes in 1982. One of the first site was where it was in where now Americana is. That's where we started Loaves and Fishes. In 1980s, we began to see the level of poverty changing, and the people were beginning to come to us. At that time, Catholic Charities were majority of the time we were doing family counseling services, but the poverty we began to see, so we began to respond to that, and that's how we started on that site. And then when the community center, we had a very long relationship with the city of Glendale. So the city of Glendale built the current community center on San Fernando Road, and with that we moved. The site was going to go away anyway, so we moved our Loaves and Fishes to the current Glendale Community Center. And some of you may remember City Manager Mr. Ramsey at that time. You know, he very much kind of was a proponent of providing anti-poverty services. At that time, the Brand Boulevard was being renovated, and and there was a lot of homeless people at that time congregating around Brand Boulevard, if you remember. And his approach was that in order to develop a comprehensive plan, instead of sending some people to some other locations, let's do some provide services. And to give you a little bit of kind of background, that we had a very dynamic relationship with Jess and Moises. We kind of developed this continuum of care. And if my memory serves me right, the continuum of care that is now being adopted by the HUD department very much started here. And I think that this city can be very proud of that, how we developed that continuum of care services, how we link services with each other. And part of this was homeless prevention was very much a priority for the city of Glendale, and we were very honored to participate in that. So Loaves and Fishes basically, as I said, is an anti-poverty program. Whether the economy is good or bad, poor always are there and poor always suffer, so we are there for them. The Loaves and Fishes itself is as a food pantry, and then with the city funding, with CDBG and ESG funding, we are able to develop this homeless prevention program. That has been in operation about almost 15 years or longer. And so our main objective is to keep people who are either fixed income or for some unforeseen reasons they ran out the money, they were not able to pay the rent, and they have three-way notices and eviction, and we are able to, with CDBG funding and some help from the parishes and local, working with other like Shelter Partnership and others, we are able to get these individuals and household keep their homes, stay in their homes. So we are very grateful for the fundings. All of the three of you have seen this program and visited many times. Mr. Armenian, if you have any question about the program itself, Laura is the program coordinator. She does the case management, and so we'll be very happy to answer the question. The CDBG and ESG funding has been a challenge with this. Also, is always it's evolving. The policy, the federal policy is also evolving. Sometimes it's a challenge. The criteria are changing, so it's always a challenge, but we work very, very closely with the city and city staff, and we are very proud of the relationship that we, Catholic Charities, has had over the years with the city, and the committee has always been very supportive, and this is one of the neediest programs, so, and the committee has always supported it, and we hope that you will continue to consider it favorably. So we're happy to answer any question we can.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions?
I have a couple questions. First, thank you for the offer. I'm going to try and get out to see all the participants on the who are getting CDBG funding, so I'll be reaching out to you soon.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah. My question is similar to some questions I asked other groups, which is how do people know to seek you out for help? Where do they hear about you, or how do they find you?
Well, again, we have been here for over 20 years, and it's a very well-known program in the city. We work very closely. City also has embarked on, oftentimes, send out, communication. We do put out messages in the parish church bulletins. And the other agencies know us, Salvation Army, other agencies know us. So it's through the network that over the years we have developed. There's no shortage of clients.
Mm-hmm. And how do you deal? I assume there's no shortage of clients. So how do you handle probably the greater need than you can possibly help? How do you manage to prioritize?
Do the best we can. We try to negotiate with the client. What can they? We parlay the funds that we get, and with other agencies, and also with the churches and within Catholic Charities, with FEMA, EFSP, and we try to negotiate as best as we can, and stretch the funds as best as we can. Sometimes, you are not in a position to help. The federal government has increased the criteria. Made it more stringent. Sometimes they don't meet it, so we try to refer them elsewhere as best as we can. It is a challenge.
Thank you.
I'm very familiar with the program. I was wondering, are you still working with the Armenian Relief Society?
Yes, we are. I get referrals from them, and I also refer to them.
Yeah. Okay.
I see a head nodding back there saying yes. The last time I was there, it's probably been a couple of years, I think. I remember you talking about a trend where you were getting more families as opposed to individuals. Is that still the trend, or is it changing?
We are getting more clients, period. We are getting more families and also singles, because a lot of people are losing their jobs and a lot of people are getting their hours cut back. I have some clients whose unemployment has run out, and we're trying to work with them to get them jobs, along with the Verdugo Job Center and along with the Glendale Galleria, Macy's has been very supportive of hiring people.
Thank you.
I have a question. So over the years, past 4 years I've been on the committee, I know that we've decreased some fundings due to our own decrease from HUD. So, and you've increased clients. How do you manage?
Well, I think one is that we've been very fortunate with the Catholic Charities. We have a very strong volunteer base. Right now, I believe we have close to about 22 volunteers. 26. Yeah, 26, she corrects me. And so that has helped us a lot, that in terms of, providing. We currently have a person who retired from, used to work many, many years ago, almost 30 years ago for Catholic Charities, retired, came back and volunteering, and has a wonderful experience as case management, worked for the state and the county, and she's very familiar with the system. So we are very fortunate able to parlay these kind of...
That's great. Any other fundraisings that you do in the community, or?
We we're very fortunate to be part of the Catholic Charities, larger organizations. So,
okay, so
they fund us.
They fund you.
Because, as you know, that the CDBG and ESG funding doesn't pay for the entire. So the funding is done through Catholic Charities.
Thank you.
What was our funding last year? Do you recall?
36, was it?
Oh, I'm not even looking. Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next agency is Home and Men Glendale Ararat Chapter After School Tutoring.
I think this is one of the oldest programs here. Hi, Armand. How are you? Welcome.
Chairman Olivares, member of the committee. My name is Armand Gorgorian, and I'm from Home and Men Glendale Ararat Chapter. We are a non-profit organization which has been serving the Glendale community since 1978, providing youth with moral, physical, and social education. The membership over the past 35 years has grown to more than 2,600 members who pay a modest membership fee depending on means. Since inception, Home and Men Ararat has provided services to over 15,000 children, young adults, and seniors, and they have become really professionals and leaders of the community, majority of them. One of the stats that I'm very proud of, saying that within the last 35 years, out of these 15,000 or even more kids that have come through our ranks, probably we've had maybe a handful of bad apples. The rest of them have been good citizens. The mission of Humanitarian is to provide wholesome and positive programs for children, youth, and families through organized after-school and weekend activities in a family-oriented environment. Humanitarian strives to develop a sense of volunteerism, community service, citizenship, teamwork, and leadership skills in order to divert youth away from the negative influences facing them, such as drugs, gangs, and crimes. Regarding that, we just started a program working with an organization that is specifically doing that. Their job is to monitor people that are using alcohol or substance abuse, and we are partnershiping with them. We have dedicated a room in our center so that if a coach or a scouts leader or any person sees that difficulty or problem with any of the kids, they refer to that and they will follow that up. That actually, the opening will be next Tuesday. We own our own facilities on San Fernando Road, actually 2 of them, with ample space for a wide variety of programs and activities and easily accessible. Through our programs, we serve over 2,000 youth each year, the great majority of whom are low to moderate income children between the ages of 7 and 18 who live in Glendale. We have applied for a tutoring program for the past several years, and our tutoring sessions are Monday through Thursday from 5 to 7 p.m. at our center. And each session is for 1 hour and includes no more than 7 students. That was our plans, and we have usually done that. But when the funding that we request is not as much as what we receive is much less than what sometimes we have to moderate that. This year we received probably 1/3 of what we applied for, and because of that maybe 1 or 2 of our classes are more than 7 kids, and the total number of kids that we're serving is much less than what we proposed to you. Student progress and outcomes will be measured and tracked to demonstrate quantifiable improvements in academic skills at all levels. The students will be given 2 assessment tests, one at the beginning of the program and one at the end of the program, to compare and see how they're doing. We, in cooperation with Glendale Unified School District, contact the administrative and we give them the flyers and ask them to distribute it in the lower part, southern part of the city of Glendale for middle school and elementary schools. In addition to that, we emailed more than 3,000 emails to children so that they are aware of our program, and we also promote it within our own ranks, for our own members. We work on English and math with the children, and we propose to increase their numbers by 20%. But the past several years that we have all records at our center, the progress and improvement is much more than 20%. So we're very proud of that. Our tutors are college students or college graduates. We have one administrator that oversees all of that. And I will be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay. Thank you, Armand. Questions?
I have a question. So you mentioned you send an email out to 3,000 youth. That's separate from, is that to your ranks, your members, or is it outside, or is it outside of that?
It includes both, outside and our ranks.
And where do you get the outside emails from?
During the years that they have come and applied for our tutoring programs, we follow up with them so that they are aware that the program is being repeated so that they can come back. We do with the Glendale Unified School District. But the emails specifically that you're asking, it's our membership and also outside people. That within the past years they have been either a member or now their children are that age group that they can come. They have been a member in the past, but we keep all the records.
And your kids are not necessarily at risk.
Excuse me?
The kids that you serve, they're not necessarily at risk, or are they?
They are, more than 60% of them are low to moderate income people.
But are their grades already suffering before they come to you, or?
Usually, beginning of the program when we have a test, that's how we do it. Beginning of the program, we do a test with them, and then at the end of the year, we periodically monitor what they're doing. But the two tests that we have, yes, beginning of the year, their numbers are not very good. We have kids that they are good, and for the love of it, they come to additional tutoring programs. But a majority of them, beginning of the year, their numbers are not that good.
I have a question on, I understood that you are affiliated with Boy Scouts.
Yes.
Are you affiliated? Are you linked?
Homenetmen, let me explain to this. Homenetmen Western Region has about 18 chapters. We are the largest of them all. We are actually the largest Homenetmen chapter in the whole world. The Scouts in all Western United States chapters, they are a troop of Verdugo Hills Council.
They are a troop of Verdugo Hills?
A troop of Verdugo Hills Council.
The reason I ask that is because, you know, the discrimination clause that the Boy Scouts, as a private organization, is entitled to have. And I wondered, how does that affect you?
We haven't had any issue so far. We don't have. We are proud of our scouting program, and in the past, each Homenetmen chapter had they belonged to a specific council, scouting council. But then, about 4 or 5 years ago, the Homenetmen and Verdugo Hills Council got together, and we all together became a troop of that Verdugo Hills Council.
Okay.
But I didn't answer your question because it hasn't happened anything so far so that we get to a point like that.
Yeah, well, I know that in your application when you fill that you have to assert. And so once upon a time the Boy Scouts did apply for CDBG funds, and then they no longer do.
I understand that. Yeah,
so
I'm aware of
So that's why I was just curious about the affiliation. Also, another...
Ms. Ramirez, the applications that we have doesn't ask such a question.
No, the proposal that you...
Oh, okay, all right.
That you submit to the city.
Right.
Then I was wondering, you're located in Los Angeles.
We have 2 locations, one in Los Angeles, one in Glendale.
Okay, and the one in...
Serving Glendale population.
That I know, and of course I remember when you first came. But I'm just kind of curious how that Los Angeles location satisfies our requirements.
I would let Mr. Duran or Mr. Carrillo answer that question because that issue came up when the late Miss Ginger Bremberg was a council member, and she had that question.
Yeah.
And I believe their department checked with HUD and they got their answers.
We actually had that question at the CDBG level.
Yeah. I believe they can give a better answer than I can.
So will you have that answer?
Well, Mr. Duran had a comment. I don't know if it was related to that, but...
Yes. Chairman Olivares and Commissioner Ramirez. This question came up initially several years ago. We did confirm with HUD that the test to be eligible to receive CDBG funds from Glendale is that you demonstrate that you serve primarily Glendale residents. And so Homenetmen does serve primarily Glendale residents. I don't know what the percentage is. The minimum percentage is 60%, but it's probably 80 or 90% of Glendale residents. So as far as HUD's concerned, it is not an eligibility issue whether they are located in the city boundaries or outside of city boundaries. And they are right outside of the city boundary of Glendale. The other thing I wanted to note is every recipient of CDBG funds signs a subrecipient agreement, which is their funding agreement, and there are non-discrimination clauses. And so the Homenetmen Ararat chapter does attest to the fact that they understand and agree that they will not discriminate on the basis of race, sex, sexual orientation, some of the things that the Boy Scouts for a long time as a private organization would reserve the right to discriminate. And you're absolutely right. There are some organizations that will not apply for CDBG funds that are private organizations that might be serving low-income persons or target populations because we have that clause and that requirement. When I say we, it's not just the city, but it's a federal requirement, yeah.
Well, as long as it's been cleared by HUD, my concern is I recognize that it's to get a building for you, you need to get it where you can afford it, and that in Los Angeles is where it's at. So
I don't know if you recall or not, I think we served on a committee together on Pacific Edison, and I understand your question, and I appreciate your concern, but that concern came up, about 20 years ago, and it was cleared by HUD, and since then we didn't have to answer that kind of question because we are immediately outside of Los Angeles. Now we have an excuse because we have a center in Glendale also.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
It's right on the border, correct? I mean,
yes,
the centers
but
are like a block apart.
More than 80% of the people that we serve are Glendalians.
It's a wonderful program, so that I don't have any problem with that. I just want to make sure that it's, when we're talking about neighborhood improvement and we're committing funds to our neighborhoods, that they are our neighborhoods.
Yeah, and I'd like to follow up on that because I was in the committee when the issue came up, and I think it was around the time you were thinking of purchasing the building.
Yes.
And so it became a subject of conversation, and staff did check it out, and it needs to be said that CDBG has supported Home and Edmond over the years, not just on the social services side, but we also supported them in the capital improvements of their structures. And so we were very concerned to make sure that we were all within the right guidelines, and that was cleared up, and you're correct. It's never been an issue.
Believe me, myself, all the boards the past 35 years, and all the 15,000 kids that have used this facility, we all appreciate the help that CDBG has given us during the past years.
I had another question on what schools feed into that one program, or either?
Anything south of Glen Oaks Boulevard. I am not very familiar with it. I know we are going Mann, Jefferson, elementary schools. We're on Verdugo and Brown Boulevard, and then on the Verdugo and Chevy Chase, and anything, because we give this print out the flyer to City of Glendale Unified School District and ask them to distribute that to the elementary and junior highs in South Glendale.
The reason I asked that, because some of our schools, and I'm not sure which ones they are, I thought maybe you did know, they receive federal funds, the Title I, the ESL funds. So I was just wondering if you would know
I am
that
not familiar
that is
with
supposed
that program, and ours is not the ESL. This was our mentality, that language barrier which we have in our community, those of us that are not very good in English language, and we have problems with that, that stops the progress of the children in schools. So we thought if we have this program, as small as it is right now, in our programs, included in our programs, and help these kids, and that's why we went to South Glendale, because South Glendale has more Hispanic and Armenian Americans
language
there.
barriers.
So they have the language barrier. So if we can help them, these children, so we have done something good for the community.
I was just thinking in terms of duplicating services, because if the schools have ESL funds, that's what it's supposed to address.
Well, I don't know if it's actually duplication, we wouldn't have this many applications every year. I don't know. I cannot talk about the school district ESL programs, but I know that every year when we advertise our program, we get the applicants.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's for sure.
I have a question. I know that New Horizon closed about 2 years ago. Did you see an impact in increasing your students? Or
When New Horizon closed at that year, because it was in the middle of the program, so the city approached us, and we increased that. We got some from them, and we increased our program. After that, the kids that are coming, we were planning on having 170 kids this year, and we would have had it. But because of the budget, we weren't able to do that. So that many number, were they previously going to New Horizon or not, I do not know.
So what's the criteria you use to select your students if you can't take them all?
First come, first serve.
That makes it simple.
I mean, there's no other way we
But they
can.
still have to fall under the
Oh, they do. Believe me,
the
they
certain
do.
criteria with low income level and all of that.
Armin, I have a question for you. One of the things, and you used to be in this committee, so I think you'll understand the question. One of the things we're going to struggle with in February is probably more reduced funding. We're starting to see organizations come back, giving back their funding because at some point it's not worth the effort and the staff that you got to have just to deal with our city requirements and federal requirements. According to this, you got about 11,000 for the social service aspect of it last year. At which point it's become worthless to you, to the organization?
Well, right now we're getting close to that point, but as long as you are sitting on that dais, I'm going to follow your lead and ask City Council not to give the money to to organizations that are not nonprofit, not to distribute the money between the city plans, city programs, city divisions, and give it more to nonprofits. But if it gets to a point that that's what it is, yeah, maybe we will get to that point also. Last year we had 15,000. This year we have 11,600. And God knows what's going to happen next year. And if next year it's not going to, yeah, they will get evidently.
So we're approaching
that point, yes.
that point, yeah. Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next one.
Next, we have Housing Rights Center Fair Housing Program.
Good afternoon. I'm Chancellor Al-Mansour, the Executive Director of the Housing Rights Center. I'm trying to find a place for my purse. And it's very happy to see familiar faces and a couple of new ones also. So thank you. We are the Fair Housing Organization providing fair housing services for the City of Glendale for a number of years now. So this is a continuation of the program that we provide, and also landlord-tenant services as well. In the last fiscal year, we served over 600 Glendale residents, not including those that we send information to and flyers and about the resources, basically educating most tenants, some landlords, potential tenants as well, and about their housing rights. And in particular, even though our main emphasis and the one that we really specialize is to combat housing discrimination, we also receive a number of people who just have questions because they receive notices from their landlords or they want to issue a notice to their resident or to their tenants, and or they need repairs, they have a security deposit question, that type of thing as well. So those are in general the services that we provide.
And I think it bears saying that you provide this service, you're the only one that provides it in the city, because the city, our city staff doesn't have that ability, or it's not within their department duties.
Yes. I mean, unfortunately, with restriction of funds and so forth. One little thing I'll say about, although it seems like you do actually, know a lot about the HUD requirements for the administration of the CDBG program. The one thing that kind of makes the fair housing work or advocacy work a little bit different is that cities and municipalities that receive federal funds have to actually dedicate a certain amount of that funds to combat housing discrimination, in particular to affirmatively further fair housing. It's one of the requirements from HUD and so forth. And I don't know if you're familiar that HUD has actually released a proposed rule to actually require that cities, do a little bit more and so forth in terms of their obligation to affirmatively further fair housing as well. And so that's part of the role that we do for you, and that is to provide you with those services, provide you with the statistics and so forth to show that the city is doing more than that's actually what's necessary to combat housing discrimination.
Well, I've worked with fair housing before, and of course I was on a committee and we dealt with it. And you were working with the city with a program that you put together at the beginning of the year. You still do that, right?
Yes. I mean, if there's availability and so forth from your staff.
And then you're required, the city's required to have that fair housing program.
Yes. Mm-hmm, we do.
And you are located where?
Our main office is in Mid-City, LA. We have a small office at the Jackie Robinson Center in Pasadena also. And then, we physically come here and go to community meetings and presentations and workshops. Have been fortunate enough to have a very good partnership with your city staff. So that as a matter of fact, we trained, I think, like 38 of your city staff in April, I want to say. So, we physically come here whenever you need us for our services to do community presentations, resident workshops, speak to potential landlords, talk to community-based organizations, and so forth.
And really the crux of your program is when there's an issue and somebody in the city has an issue and they call community development, that call gets referred to you.
Yes,
And then
exactly.
you help them out with their issues.
Exactly. They refer to call to us as well, and on your website also, so that if they go through your website, they know to contact us.
And if they contact you and they have language barriers, how do you deal with that?
Well, we have full-time staff members who speak Armenian, Russian, Tagalog, Korean, Mandarin, Cantonese, Spanish, and so forth. So we have full-time staff
People
members who
can
do that
deal
as
with
well. Our staff member who staffs the Pasadena office, most of the time is our Armenian and Russian speaking also. If they have a hearing assistance, we do have the technical equipment and so forth if they're hearing impaired to assist them.
Since fair housing is a required program for the city, what percentage of your funding is funded through the city? And I know that we funded you $9,000, but is there more funding coming from the city? Is there a...
Well, let's see. It's a very small percent,
Okay.
very, very, very small. It's less than 1%. I would probably maybe about 1%, something like that.
So there's a separate funding that comes from the city?
Well,
The
you're talking about
9,000.
how we leverage our resources? I'll let
I think
Moises.
Moses
Yeah,
kind of...
Madam Chair, Committee Member Mark Karen, yes, there is the separate CDBG portion, which is currently, I believe, 9,000, and the additional 6,000 is from our housing home
Okay,
program.
that's what I want.
The total is 15,000, which had been the regular CDBG allocation, except for the prior cutbacks.
All right, thank you.
And I think part of the way that it was so successful is because they do also get CDBG funding from other cities. So when they all pull it all together, they're able to provide such a good, efficient service.
Yeah, exactly. We provide fair housing services throughout the county of Los Angeles and Ventura County as well, and we also have a grant directly from HUD to do random audits and testing as well to try to determine whether there's housing discrimination when we don't get a call from an actual resident. Oftentimes that's necessary because, as I'm sure you can imagine, a lot of times residents are fearful of retaliation and so forth, and fearful of eviction. So we do receive some small funding from HUD where we can do random testing. We send out testers regardless of whether or not a tenant has called and made a complaint as well. So, we definitely, in response to your question to a previous presenter, we rely on leveraging our resources, and that is basically the only way that an agency such as ours can provide the level of services that we provide, because we do, fortunately, have some other funding to leverage those resources.
I've also been a tester in the San Fernando Valley.
Oh, very good.
Fair housing.
Well, thank you. That's excellent.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for
and
taking the time.
Are you going to volunteer to be a tester again? I'm always looking. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Next, we have Door of Hope Transitional Housing Program for Homeless Women and Children.
Hi, good afternoon. It's good to
Afternoon.
be with you again today, and thank you for allowing us to share. I know many of you are familiar with Door of Hope. I'm personally very passionate about what I do because I love kids. I have 3 kids of my own, and one thing that really breaks my heart is when I see and hear of homeless children. I've been working with homeless children families personally for 23 years now, and I've been at Door of Hope for the last 7. Door of Hope's been around for 27 years. I've given you brochures and information about Door of Hope that you can look at, but Door of Hope is an organization that works with homeless families and children. We are a comprehensive program that, as I mentioned, in 1985 was started as one of the first transitional housing for homeless 2-parent families to keep families together while they're homeless. In the 90s, the fastest growing homeless population became single women and children, in which Door of Hope started working with women and children. And in 2009, Door of Hope came to Glendale to be able to take over the Hamilton Court women and children transitional housing for homeless women and children that are homeless as a result of domestic violence. In 2013, our current homeless count here in Glendale was 320 homeless, and of them, 116 were members of families and 63 were children. And that's why Door of Hope exists, for homeless children and families. Our mission is to equip homeless families and children to rebuild their lives. We don't do it for them, we don't tell them what to do, but we come alongside them in some of the most crisis time of their life to be able to help them rebuild their life. We do that through a comprehensive program of case management, individualized case plans, counseling, life skills, budget and finance, parenting classes, a comprehensive after-school program, and more, and numerous other supportive services. Since 2009, Door of Hope coming to Glendale, we've had over 100 families and over 300 children come through our program. Much of what I've shared is just information and data, but I thought probably to best describe who we are as an organization, I've asked one of our current residents to come and share with us, just to share a little bit about what Door of Hope has meant to her. And she is currently living at Door of Hope. She is a survivor of a victim of domestic violence, and so for that reason, we're asking that you'll be able to see her and hear from her personally right now. But we'll turn the cameras facing away from her, and I will introduce her as Holly Rice. That's not her real name, but Holly, if you'd like to come and share just a little bit about what Door of Hope means to you.
Welcome.
Hello, thank you. I'm glad to be here to share my experience with you. It's been a journey for me. Door of Hope has opened their doors to me and my son and has helped me in numerous ways. First, I got there. I am a DV victim of domestic violence, and I had nowhere to go with my son. Limited resources. I ended up at Door of Hope with a apartment full of furniture, resources as far as therapy, one of the main things that I needed at the time to get me some structure and to get me a balance. My son, his education, he has soared. Before, he hated reading. He didn't want to go to school. He was always upset, irritable. Door of Hope provides child care, lots of love and support, counseling. I had a case manager who stood with me all the way through this trial and these tribulations, and helped me with job stability. Actually, I was able to go back to school and complete a certificate program I had always wanted to complete. And I have full-time employment, full benefits. I make more money than I could ever thought I'd make ever in my life. And I'm on my way to transitioning out. It's been about 9 months. And it hasn't been that doom and gloom that most people would think because of Door of Hope. It's been a supportive system, and it's helped me to get through this in a way I want to say it's a way to help you have that stability to move on and not look back. It's like a safety net where you know that you have the tools now to make it and the resources. So what led me to Door of Hope, I know that now I have the strength, the capability, and the knowledge not to ever be there again. The education that I got at Door of Hope has helped me to be a better parent as well, because we have a lot of education classes there too, especially with children that are going through things. And I appreciate Door of Hope, and thank you for listening.
How old is your son?
He is 11.
So where do you see yourself a year from now?
Well, just got my certificate, finished that. As an RN, maybe owning a home, probably in about 2 years owning a home. I really landed a great job, and my skills have increased quite a bit at Door of Hope.
Congratulations. You obviously have some good strength and good help, so
thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Any questions for her?
Congratulations. We visited Door of Hope numbers of times, and every time there is a touching story that we hear from residents there, and we really appreciate everything you do. I mean, we saw children, happy families, really, as you mentioned, this is a place where they gain strength and they really think about what the next steps are in their life. They get the needed support. So it's a wonderful facility. Thank you. It's a great story.
I just want to add one other thing. The diversity there as well. There's so many different types of families and women there. It also brings a sense of community. and awareness of who you are in the big picture of things. And that was something that I didn't have. And that also helped me as far as landing a great job, being a Door of Hope, meeting different people, learning different cultures. So I just wanted to add that. It's very diverse, and I really...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question. So how do people find you, and kind of what's your feeder system? Do you work with other CDBG nonprofits that are funded by CDBG?
Yes, excellent question. Actually, I should have mentioned we do take families from Glendale as a priority. Most of our families come from Essentia, from emergency shelter, or from YWCA, another emergency shelter for domestic violence victims. And so we do take local Glendale residents as a priority. Obviously, because of domestic violence, sometimes that's not possible if they're really, really close. And yeah, so we get calls every day, usually at least 20 to 30 calls for every one opening. We have 13 families at a time. They stay an average of 7 to 9 months. They can stay up to a year, but we really try to intensify the program, get them into permanent housing as quickly as possible, maximizing the resources that we have to be able to help them rebuild their life and heal. And with the goal of breaking the cycle of homelessness, not just put a Band-Aid, but actually solving the problem.
You get any Armenian families?
Yes, we have currently 2, which just barely speak English, but yeah.
That was going to be my follow-on question, which is, how do you deal with the language barriers or cultural? There are also cultural barriers to seeking services sometimes and seeking help. So how do you deal with that?
We have an amazing team of staff as well as partners in the community that we connect the resources depending on the need, depending on the language or the cultural need. But yeah, we have a very diverse group right now.
I have a question. I think there was the mention of referring for therapy. Do you have a therapist on staff?
We have a therapist on staff on site, and it's actually a requirement of our families to be able to go to therapy on a weekly basis for an hour, and then we also do follow-up for at least 6 months after graduating so that they continue to... Our goal is to heal from the inside out,
sure.
And sometimes, and most of the time, there's always brokenness and a lot of different emotional and challenges, especially as they've come through homelessness and domestic violence.
And you serve how many families?
13 at a time. Throughout the course of the year, we'll have anywhere from 25 to 30 families come through our program. And so that, in the last 4 years, over actually 105 families in the last 4 years have come through our program.
Very good. I have another question. Were you ever located in Burbank?
No, but we do, as Glendale Continuum of Care, occasionally serve Glendale families as well. I mean, Burbank families.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
How are your capital improvements going?
They're going well. We just actually confirmed our last windows bidders things just recently. So we're going full speed ahead
on schedule
and very, very thankful for that. Yeah. So actually I wanted to make sure before I left, I might make sure that I did thank you for the capital improvement, but more than just the physical, but you're changing lives. You're partnering with us. That's what we're about. I mean, they need air conditioning, they need new windows, they need the capital improvements, but they need their lives. They need a safe place to stay. This basic essentials, and then loving staff that come alongside them and treat them as family, and help them, build self-sufficiency and permanent housing.
Thank you very much. Thanks for...
Thank you.
And thank you for telling the story. It was great. Okay, who's next?
The last agency with us today is Essentia Homeless Outreach and Case Management.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you. There's actually 2 items, but I'm speaking just to the service piece. Is that correct? Or everything?
I think you can speak to both.
Okay. Well, we have been very grateful for your support of our street outreach program year after year. This CDBG funding has gone to the provision of our street outreach program, which is critical in finding people on the streets of Glendale and bringing them in for services, typically working with some very chronically ill people, people with acute mental illness, and who need a lot of wraparound services to get them off the streets. And I brought Alfred here today to tell you a little bit about the street outreach program, but I also wanted to, before he says anything more, let you know that we have in fact moved to our new building. We have new brochures, so I want to share that with you, which has a map to our new location. So we are now on the very edge of Glendale on Tyburn Street, literally walking distance from Home and Netman. We just walked by there today, and are still glad to be within the limits of the city of Glendale. We also are the winter shelter operator, and for this coming year, we are looking to move from the Armory to our old location at Fernando Court. We have obtained the lease extension through March so that we can do this, and our outreach team will be integral to the success of that program. The City of Burbank has committed funding to add another outreach worker as well, and they're also contributing another $5,000 toward, I shouldn't say that. It's in process, but it's looking like they'll contribute that much to our winter shelter program. What we learned in doing this move, we wanted to accommodate some wishes from the City of Glendale to not be at the Armory because that creates some issues at the Adult Recreation Center and at the park nearby. So we're moving our location down to the south side of Glendale, and that's created some other issues related to funding. We've worked with the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority to try and see if we could fill that gap. They're not able to do that because their rent payment to the Armory is separate state funding that cannot be reallocated to us for the lease of our property. So what's happened is that the lease compensation for this project falls a little short for what we're being charged at that property, and we have a small budget deficit. So if there is any additional funding that you have to consider today, I would like to also present for you the possibility of helping us close our budget gap on the winter shelter project. Having said that, I would like to also now introduce Alfred Hernandez, who is our lead outreach case manager, and he can tell you a little bit more about his job.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Alfred Hernandez, lead outreach case manager for Ascensia. I want to share, last year out of winter shelter, I think we've housed about, for sure, on the top of my head, I know for 3 people for sure. There's one individual, he was homeless, no income, no GR, nothing. Outreach was able to hook him up with GR, and then from there we got him SSI. And then, and at the same time, he was from winter shelter. He transferred over to Ascensia. He was staying at our shelter, and within about 11 months, we were able to get him his SSI and house him. So he is now housed. We've also housed a few veterans, and from winter shelter. We also got a gentleman at the park, very sick, was hospitalized, went through our shelter. And he's housed again today in Glendale.
I just want to add that Alfred and David, our other case manager, work really closely with the City of Glendale Police Department and with the library staff to identify people who are in need of our services. The other thing that our outreach team does that's particularly critical now is it's allowed us to add another position funded by Baxter International Foundation, and that is a hospital liaison. So frequently they will find people on the streets who are cycling really in and out of the hospitals, and they're costing a great deal of money to our local hospitals, and they're not getting better because they're being discharged back to the streets. Our hospital liaison will be there to screen and identify homeless patients and work on referring them into permanent housing. The sort of the grease that makes those wheels turn is the street outreach team. They provide essential transportation to appointments. They will go to the appointment with the client if they need it. If we think that the client isn't going to sit still long enough and stay and get those services, the outreach team will stay with them. They've gone to court to advocate for them in the court. They do whatever it takes to get that person to the next step so we can move them out of homelessness. And I know Alfred's kind of modest about what they do, but you do actually a phenomenal job, and so I wanted you to, I don't know that you've met him yet, so welcome to the commission as well, and if there are any other questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you.
Do you work with local hospitals? Because I know many times, especially during winter, some of these homeless persons end up at the ER, or just, to seek shelter, they're there because it's raining, or they try to get some help, or be admitted because they don't have anywhere to go. I mean, you mentioned
Yes.
about the liaison, but are they working with local hospitals, or
Yes, yes. We
ERs?
are members of the Glendale Healthier Community Coalition. We have business associate agreements with Glendale Adventist Medical Center and with Glendale Memorial Hospital. We'll be working with Verdugo Hills Hospital as well. And we are literally inside the hospital working with the staff. We contact the discharge planning staff for them to identify the patients and work with those who we know are homeless. It's a little tricky endeavor. Sometimes people don't always self-identify, but to the extent that the hospital knows, they know who the regulars are. We are really excited about this. And in fact, that project is part of a national initiative through the Federal Social Innovation Fund. We're one of 4 projects in the country that is tracking the cost of helping people who are chronically homeless and frequent utilizers of hospital services. So we're really pleased to be part of that, and the hospitals here in Glendale have been fantastic partners.
And I also want to thank Alfred. I think I've seen you around the hospital. I've seen you at 1560 building with clients, really helping them to get to their appointments, and I appreciate all you do. Thank you.
With the $26,000, what does that translate to? How many cases or how many clients?
Well, we leverage other funding sources, obviously. That is about 150 contacts for your outreach program, and then within that, we have a group of people that will move into permanent housing using available resources. And that's where it gets really tricky, because there's a lot of limitations to the amount of affordable housing that's available. But typically, we're working with the Shelter Plus Care program through the City of Glendale, and then also the VA's VASH voucher system.
Yeah, this year I think we've housed 9 chronically homeless people.
Actually, it's closer to over 20 for the agency as a whole.
Okay.
So are we seeing an increase in numbers in homeless people in Glendale? Is that?
Well, the year before was 299. The gentleman earlier has shared it's 320 this year. So it's gone up about 20.
It's gone up.
And that's the countywide trend has also increased.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
How do you handle cases where a homeless person doesn't want to be housed?
That's we're just really patient. We keep going back and back.
That's where the work starts. I don't know if you guys have noticed this gentleman that's always off of Colorado and Brand, Colorado and Brand. His name is he's in a wheelchair. Anyways, he's been in the streets for quite some time. He's been a very hard case. He just got approved, I think, for Shelter Plus Care. And I spoke to him this afternoon, and he's still being hard-headed and just telling me, you guys are taking too long. I'm not going to go. But it's just being patient with him and just making him feel good about himself and just talking to him along the way and just working with him. That's the only thing that we could do. It's just...
And you're working with the police department as well?
Yes, ma'am. I work with the police department very closely.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing your new facility.
Yes, we'll look forward to having you.
Actually, a friend of mine saw the new facility. My daughter and her friends were doing a bake sale or benefit bake.
Yes, I think I met them.
Yes, and we had some leftovers and fresh, all homemade, and the kids wanted to bring it over. I couldn't go, but my friends and some children visited the facility, and they had everything good to say about how clean and beautiful, how friendly everyone is, and the staff and everyone who's there were very pleasant. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
Moises?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just had a question. I wasn't clear on this. You mentioned there's a budget gap for Winter Shelter Homes program, and you said there was an amount that you had requested?
Well, we've identified a $14,000 gap. We're looking to seek donated meals to help close that. We've managed to arrange it so it's pretty much in the food line item, and we're hoping that we'll be able to expand the guest chef program that we currently have. That's a program where people will buy, cook, and serve dinner to our guests, and it's very successful. And during the winter months, the volunteer opportunities or requests to volunteer do tend to pick up, so we're hoping we'll be able to leverage that, though it's not a guarantee. So having additional funding would help alleviate some of the pressure on us to close that gap.
Did you say a specific amount, or is it the whole 14? Is it?
Well, I would say, well, the whole 14 would be great, but I don't want to be greedy. I would say if there were $5,000, that would help us quite a bit. 10 would certainly take even more pressure off of us, but certainly 5,000 would really help alleviate the challenge that we're going to be facing for this.
You do receive housing funds
By housing funds, do you mean?
from the city?
We receive supportive housing program funding for a variety of programs, for services and for some housing subsidies, and then we partner with the city to provide services to their Shelter Plus Care residents.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so what's next on our agenda?
Next, we have item 4B, action items. 4B1, review and approve report on the cancellation of the fiscal year 2013-14 multicultural program and ESL classes project and the reprogramming of CDBG funds to an existing agency or agencies. At A is a motion to approve the reprogramming of fiscal year 2013-14 CDBG funds in the amount of $15,000 to an existing agency or agencies.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, last meeting we announced that there was a couple of changes in the CDBG program. One, we had mentioned about the $5,000 in Camp Rosie funds that were not utilized as a result of some funds being available for that program. In addition, we did mention that there was a expected return of $10,000 in CDBG funds from the Glendale Association for the Retarded Multicultural ESL program for fiscal year 2013-14. As a result of that, there is an availability of $15,000. The committee did ask us to confirm with GAR if additional $5,000 would assist them in maintaining the program, and unfortunately they are still unable to utilize the CDBG funds. So again, as a result, then we do have the $15,000 to reallocate in current year CDBG social service programs. Just to make a note, that is for current programs. It's not something that we can carry over till next year. We should utilize that funds in the current year. Since that money does not get utilized or budgeted, it does not come back to the CDBG program, and we don't get to use very valuable social service funds. So we currently have several options, and these are two of possibly three options. One is to follow the suggestion by the advisory committee and staff that was presented at the October 9th meeting to allocate these funds to existing social service providers, and using the presentations that you've heard over the last two meetings as a guide to allocate those funds to what we would call certainly priority safety net programs, which assist low-income residents with housing, case management, nutrition, counseling, homeless services, or after-school at-risk youth programs. And that is one option. The committee could recommend funding one or two agencies or programs with these funds, but staff does not recommend splitting that out over numerous ones, since the programs and projects have already started and the contracts have already been signed, and it would be a challenge to go back and redo all that contract. The second option is to do what we call an abbreviated RFP, a project description, which we have in the past, and request that from the existing agencies to give us a brief statement of interest and how the funds would be used, what additional service goals and levels would be met and outcomes, and what would be achieved from receiving additional funds. And then the committee will need to come back, review the proposals, and make a decision based on those funding proposals that come in. So those are the two options. Obviously, there's a third option that would take an effect in February when you're reviewing all the CDBG applications and reviewing applications that come in and proposals. But again, that's February 21st. That's very late in the year, and we would certainly like to make some recommendations to have some type of allocation by the end of the calendar year, December. So so staff and again committee did make the suggestion that recommendations would be made following the presentations today. We do have additional information if the committee would like. We do have the recommendations that were made, again, for these services, and also what was requested by these agencies, what was funded in 1213, the difference in the what received in 1213 and what was received in 1314. And of course, we do have the first quarter performance measures for all the agencies to see where they are with their proposed goals, and with that, and certainly all of them have met first quarter goals, and so there really isn't any agency that has not met their goals. But we do have that information available for the committee if they'd like to see that.
Mr. Chair,
Please.
I'm pretty satisfied with the report, and I'd like to move approval of the option 1 for submittal to the City Council for final approval.
Well, this will not go to the city council, or
We need a
does it?
second in the discussion.
Mr. Chair, yes, I apologize. Yes, this recommendation does go to the City Council. Again, recommendation would be to do the reprogramming at this meeting and then provide those recommendations to the City Council at the November 19th meeting. So your recommendations will be part of the overall report to the City Council. So it does go to Council for final approval.
If I may, I think you're making a motion on option 1, which will require our discussion in terms of how we're going to allocate the funds. So
Exactly, you
we
need a
should-
second in discussion.
Well, I think we should probably have. Does anybody else want to comment on?
Yeah,
We'll hold
sure.
We'll hold
Sure.
the
Absolutely.
So I have some questions and concerns I'd like to put on the table. So I still believe that, you know, we need to look at the programs that are currently funded as potential recipients of the available additional funds. But my concern and question is, how do we do that in a fair way that allows us the proper information that would give us the ability to make that sort of judgment? Certainly, all these presentations that we heard were informative, but I don't think any of the organizations came to the table knowing that, you know, that potentially they were pitching for an additional $15,000, number one. Number two, I would venture to guess that every single organization would, if asked the question, could they use $15,000, would say yes. And they could probably provide a good case for each of their
or
needs,
could they use
right?
5,000
Yeah,
or 3,000?
yeah. So, and I do agree with staff that, you know, trying to divide it up in too many ways doesn't really, other than just trying to be fair, doesn't get us to the point of getting the funds to be meaningful, a meaningful contribution to some sort of goal. So I don't have the answer to my question. I just want to put on the table that I do believe that we need some sort of fair process by which to do this. I don't know if number two, which is an RFP process, not being close enough to this, how cumbersome is it? You know, sometimes bureaucracy can defeat a good intent, so I certainly don't want to advocate for more bureaucracy that would defeat the purpose of the 15,000, but I also want to maintain some sort of fairness to all our current recipients, because, like I said, every one of them could probably make a very compelling case on how to use 15 or some portion of 15 for an existing program. Some of the reports we heard, kind of without knowing, kind of touched upon where they had some gaps and what they could do with more, but I don't think they were told, you know, this is going to be available, and so make sure you include, you know, in your presentation how you would use 15. So maybe I'm asking staff, could there be some sort of process that creates a little bit of a structure by which we come to this decision a little bit beyond just the 10 to 20 minute presentations we've heard?
Chairman Olivares, committee member Armenian, I think the fairest, surest way of developing funding recommendations would be the abbreviated RFP, would be to issue a request for a statement of interest or project description to all of the currently funded agencies, give every agency an opportunity to make a pitch, to advise you as to how they would use the additional funds and what would be the additional goals or service levels that they would be able to meet with the additional funds, and have them call an extra meeting of the CDBG Advisory Committee. Depending on the number of agencies, if it's 6 agencies, we could probably get it done in a couple of hours. If it's 9 or 10, it's might be 3/4 of a day, but maybe not, because it's just an abbreviated RFP. We don't have to get into evaluating financial statements or organizational capacity, because theoretically we've already done that. These are agencies that we already know have capacity and have demonstrated experience and accomplishments with the CDBG funds. So it could be abbreviated. We could probably get it done in 1, 2, or 3 hour meeting. It's not that cumbersome. It's probably most cumbersome on you and your valuable time, but in terms of the staff work, we've done it before. We've had practice. We have experience. That would probably be the fairest, surest way. We would probably have to separate that from the next agenda item, which we have. One of our next steps is to submit a report to City Council to request that the City Council review and approve the proposed funding allocation plan for fiscal year 14-15. We could still do that and hold a revised current year plan in abeyance, and then go back to Council with the revised current plan when we're ready. So we could still do that. We could still get Council's authorization to approve the RFP for the 14-15 year. We could still get Council's approval to approve the program priorities for 14-15. And again, just hold the current year plan in abeyance until we made decisions on reprogramming this $15,000. So it's doable.
And would we be able to restrict the RFP to say only how you would use funds on current programs so that you don't get a new project that's pitched?
Yes.
How about restricting it? I mean, I would assume it's going to be going to social programs and not
Correct.
any other program.
Correct.
So, and how many social programs do we have that are currently receiving?
I think there are 10 listed there.
11.
11? Okay.
Now, there was mention
Well,
of...
taking out the GAR and Rosie, so that's 11 or is it 9?
It's 11. Yeah.
With them taken out.
Now, there was mention about programs that are dealing with on the street, well, I forget the term, that are more important than others. Now, what I would not want to get into, two of us are very familiar with all these programs, and I think we would be comfortable making some recommendations, but at the fairness of the other 3 members who are fairly new, and all you've seen is these brief presentations of what they do, for that I would suggest the abbreviated RFP. I'm not so sure that we need them to present again, since you've already seen the programs, and all we want to see is how they would enhance the programs this year, because they would be the same proposals, the same uses. I don't think we're in a position to entertain any change.
Have all 9 presented? Have all 9 presented here, the social services program? So we have seen, I mean, for the new members, you have heard almost...
So what you're suggesting is based on the documentation that they would provide in response to an abbreviated RFP, we could have a working session that would review all those.
Which would not require presentations or interviews, but based on the face value of the written proposal, you can evaluate that and make a recommendation, sure.
Ms. Ramirez, what do you feel about that?
Well, at our last meeting, we recommend that the funding be based on what was presented on October 9th and today.
That was a recommendation, that was a point of discussion. So today we make the decision.
Yeah, but now we want to put it off.
Well, I think we're considering an alternate path to get it done.
So I mean, staff was not recommending this RFP process.
Right.
I just want to be clear, right?
Right. If I could clarify, staff was recommending to to try to make a recommendation on how to reprogram the $15,000 today at the conclusion of having heard all of the social service agencies and what their programs are about, what their service levels are like, and make those recommendations, and we can incorporate those recommendations into a revised current year plan that we would submit to the City Council in 3 weeks. The second option, which is the option that staff was not recommending, is to do the abbreviated RFP and to take some time to go to each agency and give each agency an opportunity to submit a one-page proposal, project description on how they would use the funds. So it sounds like the committee is leaning towards the second option, which would be the abbreviated RFP.
So we do have a motion on the table.
Yeah, isn't that assuming that that everybody's going to get what they asked for?
I'm not sure I understand
what the question
Well, you know, we have this our chart. How much each presenter
the current
is requesting, and so
The chart that you have is what was allocated to them by the committee earlier in the year. That's what their contract is with the city.
Thing.
So now all of them will be given the opportunity to come back and say, yeah, we could use X amount of dollars to enhance our program, essentially.
But we know
on
that.
how they would do it. But
No,
how they
I
would
think
do it.
there's a little bit of confusion. They've all asked for a certain amount, but that now there's an excess of 15 because one of the entities who asked it is returning, or two of the entities
Sure,
are.
I understand that.
So
I know.
now we don't have some in their presentations have overtly said they could use more, like this last one from Essentia. Some have implied that they have shortcomings in funding, like they could
all of
always
them can use more. That's
Right.
my understanding.
Right, and so that's kind of why I personally.
I don't need to hear any them to come back and tell me I need.
But how are
more
you
money.
going to determine who gets it out of them?
I already heard the presentations. I heard two that I'm ready to support.
Related, Mr. Chair, committee members, related to option one is the further suggestion that we exercise that option and focus on safety net programs.
Yes, that's what.
Which will narrow down a little bit more and maybe make it easier and have a more even playing field if we're focusing on safety net programs for which to reprogram the $15,000. And a safety net, by definition, means these are programs which are addressing the needs of the most in need in our community, like the homeless programs or programs for victims of domestic violence, versus, for example, after-school recreation programs, which would not necessarily be safety net. So I understand that was another thing that the committee discussed at the last meeting in terms of how to focus the reprogramming of extra funds.
Okay, well, if we were to look at the list that we have in front of us, which ones would be considered safety net?
The 6 and 7.
To kind of follow up in your rationale.
Right. Would that CAST program meet that criteria?
Well, can you go down the line and tell us which ones you consider safety nets?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Well, safety net, that's a very broad definition as well. Obviously, we could call everything that's on our list a safety net program because they certainly are benefiting low-income persons, and they do have a effect of helping a family get through situations. However, if you look at the definition, of course, more defined, it is getting a family or household through a obstacle and having a program that will assist them in benefiting their income, their housing, their well-being. So I can use that criteria and go through the list here and note from my opinion, and I'm not sure which list we're going off of. The list. Okay, so we'll start off from the top, city projects. Senior services is obviously a safety net program where we're doing direct case management with seniors and assisting them with basic household needs. STAR Youth Program is also a safety net program where they are certainly guiding youth with very disadvantaged homes into a program that gives them a lot of mentorship, and that certainly has proven itself as being a safety net program. Youth and Family is certainly a newer, well, not a newer, but a program that works with youth that are at risk, but I'm not sure if that's the safety net that you were looking at as far as referrals and information and case management counseling given to the program recipient. Of course, Camp Rosie is no longer funded. Homeless outreach and case management certainly is a safety net program, since that is a direct benefit to homeless persons and getting them out of homelessness into our emergency shelter. Transition to housing, of course, is a safety net program, and I'm sorry, I missed Loaves and Fishes is a safety net program providing direct case management for low-income persons to maintain their housing, maintain their households. Transitional housing is also, from Door Hope, is a safety net program, as well as we heard is of housing program and additional services for especially persons of domestic violence. Fair housing is not a safety net, it's a tenant-landlord fair housing program. ARS, Community Outreach, is a safety net program where we certainly are working with low-income families and low-income immigrants who are in need of the case management services offered by ARS to maintain their income, their quality of life. The GYA program, which we heard last month, works directly with the very low-income, at-risk youth. It's not just the low-income, it is very low-income youth who a lot of times are one of the breadwinners of the family. So that's certainly a very needed safety net program. CAST, we heard, is a mental health program for very low-income students who need the assistance of counseling to maintain their well-being, and certainly a direct case management, direct counseling program, which even though it's group counseling, that we do consider it as a safety net. After-school tutoring program, that is a bit gray area where I've heard that is certainly a worthwhile program to assist students who are having difficulty in some topics, but on the other hand, the other half is students who just need extra tutoring assistance for better grades, and I don't think that really qualifies as a safety net program where grades are improved per se versus other programs. The Salvation Army, what we heard, is an after-school program which certainly works with not only the students who need and the families that need that after-school daycare type program, but also work with our homeless continuum of care, where they assist a lot of the homeless programs with after-school services, and when their parents are working, that is certainly a safety net program. I think that's it. That's all the programs. So I think the Youth and Family and the after-school tutoring, home enactment are the gray areas, as well as fair housing program is not being safety net. Obviously, certain can make
I count 9 organizations that fall under that category.
There are many that fall under that category, and
you think
more
we could get
difficult,
more
especially that
information?
we are going to allocate the entire 15 to just one organization. I mean, if you could just split maybe by 2.
Yeah.
Now,
at least.
In staff's estimation, are all these organizations aware that this money was available?
Mr. Chair, yes, we actually did email the agenda out to the agencies and to the departments and those who are receiving programs, and actually that's why some of the agencies did come today. So it was mentioned. There was questions and comments received by staff today, or the several, since we mailed out the agenda. So they were all aware of the agenda item, and questions were asked, and we did refer them back to the agenda, and of course many of them were able to pull out the full report on the city's website.
Okay, and that to me that falls under the term of being fair, that if all of them are aware that this money is available, they do have the option to come to the committee and make a pitch or make a presentation either on their oral communications, or I'm sure if you knew that they were interested in coming, you probably would have called to see if we should put that in the agenda in some shape or form, which I didn't hear.
I guess I beg to differ that I don't think it was made crystal clear that they were potentially in their presentations pitching for, otherwise I think it would have come across much more uniformly, clearly that they were. Some mentioned it, but many did not mention anything about additional funds and what, you know.
And I agree with you. I think that's kind of my question.
Yeah.
If they were aware, you're right, to what degree did they understand what we were doing today?
And Mr. Chair, in all fairness to the presentations that were made the last time around, we didn't want to emphasize agencies to come and make pitches at each presentation for the funds. I think the only one was Essentia, who just happened to note that they're in a bind at this point with a winter shelter program that just came up.
And to be honest with you, I mean, we've heard over this past 2 weeks, we've heard these organizations come forward and explain their program and project. I really don't know what else they can say except that everyone needs the $15,000, that it'll help their program, it'll enhance their program, it'll, you know, increase membership and outreach.
Yeah, but I guess that's a generic thing. If that was the intent, every one of them could have been asked a uniform question, which would say, if you had an additional $5,000 to $15,000, what would you do with it? We didn't do that. That would have satisfied me that we've at least given them all equal opportunity to make a case for what they would do with whatever amount of a potential $15,000.
Right, which essentially is sort of an informal abbreviated RFP.
Exactly.
Are you interested?
But
and
at
then
least
tell
you've
us.
been very fair. Everyone's coming to the table with knowing that they got to make, if they're interested in it, making at least a 2-minute pitch as to what they would do with, let's say, $5,000. That extra.
So, Mr.
Duran had a
Armenian, did you
comment.
say that you would want them to go back and ask them if you had an additional $15,000, what would you do it?
No, what I'm suggesting is, if we were intending for these presentations to justify a decision that we would potentially make today on allocating a part of a $15,000, we would have asked that question very clearly of all the organizations. Even if it weren't in advance letting them know, at least we would have asked uniformly as a committee, each one of them we would have asked the same question. At least we'd have that to go on. What we asked them to do when they were coming forward is to inform us, generally speaking, what their programs were.
But we know what they're wanting. We have the amounts that
I know, but these amounts have nothing to do with how you would make a judgment call as to who should receive what piece of $15,000. That's my personal point of view. I mean, I certainly have more information today than I had 2 sessions ago.
And I think we did know
course.
that there will be a $15,000 coming. It's just we didn't dawned us to ask that specific.
You wanted to give it all.
We knew there were.
Seemed to me at one point we kind of discussed giving it back, encouraging GAR to come back and get it.
Right,
and
they didn't want it. So
I think Mr. Duran is going to clarify some points here.
Mr. Chair, if I may, what I'd like to do is to pass out the chart that we used initially back in February of this year, which shows the current funding for each applicant, the funding that was requested, and the amount of funding that was recommended by the advisory committee and then subsequently approved by City Council, and the difference between what they requested and what was recommended, and then the difference between what they received last year and what they received this year, so that you will see which agencies took the biggest reductions. So if we make the assumption that each agency is qualified, has capacity, has demonstrated that they provide an effective service and they perform, and they've been receiving CDBG funds year after year, and that they have a need and additional funding will enhance the numbers that they're able to serve and the quality of the service, and maybe you'd feel as comfortable making recommendations today, so I'll pass this on.
My opinion of that is it's almost like going through the same process we're going to be going through in February all over again, over $15,000.
Right.
I'm not sure that it warrants that much attention right now, but that's just my personal opinion. The flip side of this is that we can sit here and go through this analysis, get a comfort level, and you'll all do that. But if we make any recommendations, there's still the chance that's depending on where they are in their cycle, in their year, in their services, they may come back and say, no, we can't use it, and we're going to be back again. If we do an abbreviated RFP, they're all going to be able to say, okay, there's $15,000 available, and come back and say, we can use this. We know for a fact whether they can use it or not. And somebody may fall off the...
It's already right in front of us that they can use it.
No, we have in front of us what we allocated, but we're not sure that they will actually use a small amount or what amount might be at the end of this cycle. Mr. Carrillo?
Mr. Chair, I don't mean to make the difference, but I think most agencies could use funding. That I don't see any agency that would not be able to use the funding. One of the things, of course, on this chart, it just represents is that really, unfortunately, it's not this committee, but it's the HUD cuts, the deep HUD cuts that have occurred, and the real impact it's made on agencies now who are way below their regular thresholds, and you'll see the differences in percent they receive from the fiscal year 12 and the current year that they're receiving funds, and some are almost 22% cutbacks on safety net programs. So I think everybody could use some funds. But again, staff would prefer not to have each one increase by a little bit, which would make, I think maybe that's the point.
That's my point, exactly.
It's not going to help them to get $500. It's probably more work for them to go back.
It's more work for you. You're changing all the contracts over small amounts. At some point, it's almost the same decision that some of these organizations are making. Is it worth taking $10,000 for all the work you got to do? I mean, it really boils down to that. And otherwise, if we choose to sit here as a committee and make recommendations today, really what it's going to come down to is what each member on this committee at this point in time feels the most compelled to fund.
Right.
It will be that simple. Now, so really the decision I think we have in front of us, because we have a motion to go with the option number 1 that was presented by staff. So we have a motion on the table. We understand the situation amongst all of us. Let's is there a second for it, or we go on to the next discussion? So the motion was again, Ms. Ramirez, to go with option 1, correct?
Option 1, the committee approves option 1 for submittal to the city council. They make the final approval.
Okay. Is there a second?
We need to make the recommendation today? Is that it?
No, I think what
just
Lila's
the
saying is
option.
different. I think you're
But the
suggesting, if I
option
may,
1 says that you make the recommendation today.
we make the recommendation.
We make the recommendation.
Right, we make the
I
recommendation.
think what you're suggesting is that it go to city council for them to make a recommendation. Did I hear that
No,
incorrectly?
the option says
No, I know what the option says. What I thought you said was different.
no, I just reworded what's in the report.
Okay, so option 1 is for us to make recommendations today as a committee that will then go to the city council for their approval or their changes. So you're going strictly the way option 1 is presented
It's
by
just,
staff.
we're approving option 1 is what I'm saying.
Okay, so your motion is to proceed with option 1.
Yes.
Is there a second? Okay, I don't hear a second, so that motion is not carried. Is there another motion?
I just feel like some of our committee members, Mr. Tashjian missing, and also I don't think Mr. Armenian feels comfortable making that decision because we're looking at a $15,000. So I want to make sure everyone's comfortable because this is a decision that...
Yeah, and my issue is, I want to make sure there's fairness. I know everyone's intent is in the right place. I'm not questioning that, but I just want to make sure we're being fair to all the potential recipients and that we're not making just an arbitrary decision. Like, for example, this is good data, Mr. Duran, but if you were to ask me, well, okay, based on this, make some decisions, you know, you could go in many different directions. You can say, whoever took the largest cuts, you know, let's divide it 3 ways and give it to them. Okay, well, who are they? Right, you could come up with some process here, but I still feel it's a little bit arbitrary.
Yeah. Before we continue,
the process is still our
we've got to make the decision.
Yeah.
It's how we get there.
The process doesn't change.
Right.
It's just, do we go with option 1 or option 2?
Right. Before we go any further, I do have a card, and I didn't want to forget it. So I'm going to open the public comment section of this item.
Did you want to give them a certain amount of time?
I think she'll understand the situation. Sonia, and I'm sorry I cannot read your last name.
Sonia Zinzali, I'm from Manili Society. I just want to inform you that we weren't aware that when we came to present our project, it's about this 15,000, so enhance our project, you know. We were aware that we have to present it to the new members of the advisory committee about our project. So we weren't, I want to make it clear, you know, we weren't aware of it, about this 15,000 that we're going to enhance our program, so we can prepare something while we give it.
So you're suggesting that from your position, you would prefer to have the opportunity to provide some information to the committee?
Yeah, to enhance
consider.
our program, because, like you said, everybody needs that money, you know, and it should be fair, you know. Like the councilman Armenian said, when it's large, the cut is large, you know. When it's small. But I wanted to make it fair. Like, I cannot ask 15,000, it's not fair. Even if you give it 15,000 to ARS, no, it's not fair. But, you know, we can develop 2 or 3, you know, 5, 5, 5. So it's more fair to use it. If you give it $500, it doesn't worth it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. We're not going to do anything, and the time we're going to put to write the RFP, and just something to make it fair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Since you're a council member now, I'm not the mayor. Got that one. Okay.
Thank goodness not.
Yeah, and I don't have any,
I have a question.
I don't have any other cards, so I'm going to close the public comment section of the hearing.
So just a question. So we cannot roll this 15,000 to the new. So it has to be decided before end of the year, or it can be during the RFP in February.
So this,
Can we ask that question? I know that it's going to be a little bit of a,
what's the cutoff date?
It's the same organizations.
The funds,
Yeah, because they're the same organizations, it can be asked.
the funds have to be expended by June 30th, or they're lost. And they go back into a general pot, and they can only be recycled for a capital improvement project later on.
But in terms of making the decision to allocate the funds,
You can defer decision to February and make it part of the proposal evaluation and interviews for next year's program. And the agencies would have to demonstrate that between February and the end of the year,
The end of 2014?
Right,
or
and June 30th,
Right.
between February and June 30th, that they have a viable way of making
Spending
good use
that.
of the funds, yeah.
Right. So if we gave an entity a certain amount of money out of the following year's cycle, but gave them some of this money, they could front-load their expenditures, that program, to make sure they spend it by June? Is that what I'm hearing?
Fiscal year 13-14 funds have to be used for 13-14 activities, right, which, and the 13-14 year ends June 30th,
Right.
2014.
yeah, Mr. Carrillo.
Well, Mr. Chair, you know I'm the ultimate bureaucrat, so it doesn't also appear well that we hold monies that have to really be spent, and obviously I know it's most challenging. I wouldn't want to be in your chair because that's the most difficult decision you make, of course, funding it. And you'll have more of this in February. So certainly from staff, as Mr. Duran mentioned, it's not a burden for staff to go out and get RFPs. We can electronically send it out, get them back electronically. It's really respectful of the time that the advisory committee needs to take to look at the proposals and ask questions. So really, it's not a burden for staff. We just certainly follow the will of the committee last time to see if we could make a decision today. But I know it's a very challenging decision to make without having the actual numbers. We could certainly get this RFP out and really get for us to see where it may fill some budget gaps, where it may increase a number of persons to be served, and of course increase quality services. And if the committee wishes to have this really for priority communities, priority safety net programs, we can do that. I don't think we could dissuade any agency from not applying, but certainly the criteria could be narrowed to safety net programs. But I don't think we could not have anybody not apply for this if it's going to go to RFP.
Meaning you'd have to make it a public, just transparent, you put it out there.
To all the existing agencies only. Yeah. So
And I think that this abbreviated RFP, if we're going to go down this route, we don't need to get into the complications of you generate a document and then you have to have us review it and approve it. I think this is simple enough that we all understand what needs to be done, so you can move forward with it if we go that route. I also want to say I would not want to cloud our decision making in February, knowing that this 15,000 here could help an organization and so on. So knowing how complicated this decision making process is.
That was why I also said I don't want to suggest anything that, from bureaucratic perspective, is going to defeat the purpose. I mean, I looked at two of our members are kind of veterans and know certainly the organizations more than I do. Would you approach it? What way would you approach this?
I mean, personally, and I would look for somebody else's motion, but I think the abbreviated RFP is probably the quickest, fairest way to do it. It would require us to meet one more time and have a discussion about it.
But we're not going to have interviews, correct? I mean, we won't.
No, I don't think we need to. I think that
Based-
they have the
just-
option to come and
It would just be
speak.
based on the documentations.
I think you now are more familiar with the organizations, and I think we can make that decision fairly quick with some backup of how they would do that.
Could be a very quick meeting.
So we're not funding, it's the same people would be coming back, no one different, right? Except it'd be narrowed.
In written form.
In written form, not
to
in
present.
person.
Yeah,
We'll have
but I
15
mean-
or 11 one-pagers probably.
We would request a one-page project description on how they would use the additional funds.
And how much they would require.
Right.
Request.
How much, how many additional persons they can serve, how it would improve their outcomes, and then we call a meeting. We will send you the project descriptions in advance, of course, and at the meeting you make recommendations that based on the one-page project descriptions, which organizations you would recommend reallocating the additional funds to.
But are you implying that
And the agencies will not be required to make a presentation or questions and answers.
would they be expecting, say, 5,000, 10,000, the whole 15,000?
There should be no expectations on their part.
Yeah, so.
I ask a question. Does it make sense, and feel free to say no, to make a decision today that we would say we're going to divide the 15 three ways, so it's what would you do with 5,000? That way we would predetermine that three organizations are each going to get 5,000 each. Does that
Or a
make any sense?
or a combination
That
of.
makes much more sense, because
Yeah, I
they're
would
going to
agree with that,
prepare, come in with abbreviated for how much money?
Yeah.
I mean, it could be as simple as saying between $5,000 and $15,000. You decide what you want to propose, and then we can reallocate a little bit. Mr. Carrillo, you had a comment?
I have a question, actually. We used to monitor, I'm sure you still do that, but we used to get a report where every organization is kind of monitored during the process, and it says, let's say in September or October, where they are with their, expenditures. So that would help also for us to kind of take a look at their expenditure up to date and see which organization is actually serving, and if they exceeded the numbers, but they are short in fundings. I think that'll really help us understand their expenditure. If they still have, fundings left and, like Camp Rosie, we want to make sure to eliminate those members. Just going to make us, help us.
We'll include
Make-
that worksheet. We actually have a summary worksheet of all of the agency's first quarter performance reports, including their expenditure rates. We will include that in the packet, the project descriptions that we...
So, Jen, just to clarify what I was saying before, because I think there's a little bit of a gap between what you repeated it after I said it, which was, does it make sense to just say it's going to be a $5,000 allocation? That way we would predetermine that we are going to give 3 allocations of $5,000 each. What would you do with $5,000 in your current programs? Does that make sense, or does that...
Yes, it makes perfect sense.
As opposed to saying between 5
and 15, because if I'm an organization, I can come and say, here's what I would do with 15, but here's what I would do with 5. It kind of gives a greater
Right.
definition. Say,
It
what would you
makes
do with
hard.
5? Number one. Number two, you're signaling in advance that 3 organizations are going to get $5,000 each.
Yeah, we're going to limit it to 3, which staff, I'm sure, would like to know that's what they're dealing with.
And
How do
we
you
might
feel about it?
end up back with the same thing, 5,000 is not worth our time.
So are
But
you-
we
are you-
know that every single one of those organizations can use $5,000.
So they won't apply if they feel that way.
Well, they already
They feel like-
applied.
It's worth the effort,
But
yeah.
at the time, they were hoping for a larger number. But now, if you make it clear that it would be 5, maybe, but
But hopefully, what I'm thinking is, this is all for existing programs, so it's not like they're going to go create a new program and say, can you do it for 5? It's going to be, how would you enhance a current program that you have with
Right.
$5,000?
Yeah.
Show us what result would you...
Let me take
achieve
a
with it?
consensus. How do you feel about that?
I still like option 1.
That one's gone. How about the discussion we're having? You okay with the 5 for 3 organizations?
Yeah, I think that's the right thing to do if you're going out with abbreviated,
But
at least.
obviously
don't
you're
have
okay with that.
The expectation.
I'll be okay with that.
Okay, so I think we have a consensus. Can we have a motion?
But I want to make sure that the staff is okay, because the first recommendation was they don't want to divide up the 15 because of all the
Piecemeal,
work
yeah.
that gets into.
We're good.
We're good?
It's okay. Mr. Carrillo is the
Staff's
ultimate
gonna
bureaucrat.
work
He
harder.
likes it.
Yeah.
I like that.
Quite a
More
title.
work, huh?
He said he likes this kind of setup.
Yeah, we're good because Moises has to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
So do we need to...
so the
We
motion...
need to make a motion.
The motion is...
Qualifying the motion. Yeah.
Yeah. But with qualification to include the parameter that we will advertise that we are interested in reprogramming $5,000 per agency, 3 $5,000 allocations per each agency.
And safety net programs. We want to mention that as well,
Yes.
right? We won't have,
You want that qualification as well? Okay.
Well, I think that.
Yes.
I think so.
Well, I thought I heard staff say that we really couldn't limit it to. I mean,
Can't
who's
limit
making the decision? Who the safety net? Somebody could have a
We
different
had this
opinion about who they
discussion
are.
last meeting.
Actually, that'll be up to you ultimately when you evaluate the project descriptions. At that time, you can determine that you want to prioritize safety net.
Yeah. So in other words, we don't necessarily need to say that. We'll determine that amongst ourselves.
But what we would say is to enhance current programs, not new programs.
Right. Actually, what we can say is that the committee will give priority to safety net programs, just like we do with the regular RFP. Okay.
Like we always do.
So can somebody make that motion?
Armenian?
So I'll make a motion for number 2, which is the abbreviated RFP, with the slight modification of that we will advertise it as 3 $5,000 allocations, and that we would give priority in the RFP process to safety net programs.
Okay.
I will
Is there a
second that.
Okay. Roll call.
Committee members Armenian,
Yes.
Markarian,
Yes.
Ramirez.
Yes.
Question is absent. Chair Olivares.
Yes. Okay. What's next? Oral communications. I don't have any cards.
Actually, next we have, just to read it into the record, 4B2, review and approve revised fiscal year 2013-14 CDBG funding allocation plan by funding category.
Is there a?
Yes, Mr.
Does
Chair.
that
members of the
does that
committee.
include the 15,000?
Yes, yes, Committee Member Ramirez, this plan just includes and just described as we identified the 5,000 in city projects with the Camp Rosie, which is unprogrammed, but it's in your spreadsheet there, and the 10,000 from GAR as unprogrammed. We just put this in here in case there was a recommendation from the committee today to include this in the plan to council. This plan will be presented to council again November 19th. However, it will stay the same as unprogrammed. Of course, we will let council know that these funds will be allocated, we hope in December, by the committee. So this plan is the plan that we're submitting to council for the for the current fiscal year 13-14 revised, what we call a second revised plan. This is not the current next year's, but this is the current year plan with, again, the caveat that we're not identifying any funds for the 15,000, any projects yet for 15,000. It's going to remain unprogrammed until the committee makes recommendations at its next meeting. I believe will probably be December when we'll finally get RFPs back and everything ready for the committee.
Does the city council have to approve this on the 19th, or can you delay that till we get our recommendation?
Committee member, that's a good question, Committee Member Ramirez. We prefer to have at least the discussion in this plan in November 19 council to approve at least the allocations. We did make some changes again because we did get the funding back from HUD that originally was cut, and council had only approved the July approved plan, and we do need to go back to the council to at least correct the, for example, administration, the capital improvement projects. So those will be part of the report. So we do have to have this approved by the committee and council. Again, the caveat is that we're not including any funding for the $15,000 of reprogrammed funds.
I think just like we had to deal with it in the interim, they're going to have to do the same thing. But still the same allocations that we had before. So.
Correct.
Yeah, didn't make any
Does this need any action from us?
This needs a motion to approve the revised funding plan. Oh, so there's no motion? Okay.
So it does not require...
A specific motion.
Just a review.
Is this a report or an action item?
It is an action item, and it requires approval.
Yeah,
So on the agenda it's an action item, so it does require approval then.
Okay, I move approval of the revised fiscal year 2013-14 CDBG funding allocation plan.
One second, staff is conferring.
The way we're seeing it here, because it is an agenda action item, and it's been presented that way to the public, we should act on it.
Yeah, we do need a motion to approve that.
Okay, and Ms. Ramirez just made a motion to approve.
And I'll second that.
We have a second. Roll call.
Committee members Armenian,
Yes.
Markarian,
Yes.
Ramirez,
Yes.
questions absent, Chair Olivares.
Yes. Okay, that's all our action items. Next is oral communications. Nobody's here, so that's closed.
Actually, item number 5 is committee staff comments.
Okay, committee staff comments. Any?
Well, let me make an observation here. We have oral communications, number 3. It says not a part of the agenda. When does the public get an opportunity to speak to agenda items?
At the time that we discuss the agenda items.
If there's a card.
But you call them?
Essentially, for example, we had that happen right now.
Yeah, but
where a person chose to speak, and we normally in the CDBG we're not so strict.
Well, it's not a matter of strict. I mean, it's opportunities. So
and that's what I'm saying is not to be strict. We're completely the opposite. If somebody wants to speak to us, we will find a spot anywhere along. That's my position anyway. I don't want to restrict it to the front or the back.
Absolutely.
I mean, there is a time for oral communications for other things, but generally speaking, if somebody submits a card anytime during the meeting, I will make the room for them to speak. So,
could we include here also on the oral communications that the public can speak? Like now we had that these were all presenters, so we didn't have anybody from the public.
But they didn't submit a card, so.
Committee member
No,
Ramirez.
they didn't have to.
If I may, Chair Olivares, Committee Member Ramirez, speaker cards are provided in the back of the room at every meeting, and the cards do include a section where they can specify if they want to speak during oral communications or if they want to speak on an agenda item, and to specify the agenda item. Any cards that are received during the meeting, I will provide them to the chair, and he will call them during the item that they notated on the card.
This is the standard process that City Council follows as well.
And again, from my perspective, just chair of the committee, I'll be as flexible as I can be to allow people to speak. I don't see, and we've had people who come to speak, particularly in February, about our process and how we should do things that has nothing to do with any agenda, and we give them the time to speak.
Well, I'm just saying that this, with number 3, is limiting, and then I don't see anywhere else where the public is informed that they can speak on an agenda item, even though I know that you're not going to keep anybody from speaking.
You don't explicitly say that, yeah.
Yeah. But I think we should include it somewhere. They
Do
can
you
speak
post
on
the
agenda
agenda differently for City Council? Is there a different language that you use to post for speaking opportunities, or maybe we can adopt that? I mean, I just don't know what.
Vice Chair, the agenda, the format of the agenda that we use is the same as the council, are very similar to. As far as I know, and I can double check, I'd be happy to with the city clerk's office. As far as I know, they do not specify on their agenda that the public.
Well, they do. See, it's fairly well known that we have two oral communications sections in City Council. So people know they can speak. They can speak to the agenda item, or just oral communications, But I think that it's important that the public be aware that they can speak to an agenda item, and the agenda, when it's printed, doesn't say that.
Maybe
just double check.
Maybe if you could check whether we can add a sentence onto that paragraph under oral communications that says members of the public can speak to any of the agenda items on the agenda at that point in time. So we'll have to develop the.
Let us know at the next meeting.
I like that better. Just let people come to oral communications and speak on an agenda item, or just to the committee.
Double check, just because I think there may be legalities here involving process. I'm not sure.
I doubt it, because that's how Burbank does it.
Okay. Well,
I'll be happy to check with our legal department and with the city clerk's office.
Okay, and then let us know.
The
next
intent
meeting.
here is to make sure they're aware that they can speak to any agenda item at that agenda item
I think that's
point.
something that the chair can also announce during
At the beginning.
that, you know.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments from Mr. Carrillo?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, just reminder of our big meeting coming up in February. We were fortunate enough to change the date to February 21st, which is our full day for reviewing all the agency proposals, and then on February 24th, it's a half day. So we avoided the Valentine's Day crush there, so we're able to make some adjustments.
I failed to mention that I like all of our customs today. It's ready for tomorrow, right? So, we've changed the dates. Yeah.
And every committee member has acknowledged that they can do those dates?
Yes, they have.
Okay. Any other comments?
No, I just want to, as a new member, appreciate, I know many of our committee members went through this process of hearing some things perhaps you've heard before, but I appreciate the patience and your willingness to go along because it certainly helped me get up to speed and familiarize myself. So I want to thank my fellow committee members for allowing that possibility.
Okay, with that,
Our movie adjourned.
We're adjourned. Thank you.